A tremor coursed through Grace's hands as she tried to keep a tray of costly wine bottles steady. An abrupt silence had blanketed the restaurant, pierced only by the agonizing sobs of a young boy. Her gaze drifted to a secluded corner booth, a place every staff member had been strictly warned to avoid. The child's weeping intensified, each cry more frantic than the last. She saw the man holding him, an incredibly striking figure in a tailored charcoal suit, appearing more defeated than a person of his stature should ever seem. Their gazes locked from across the bustling space. His eyes were like turbulent amber storms, filled with exhaustion and a silent plea. Before her supervisor could intervene, Grace found her feet carrying her toward the off-limits table. She was unaware that the man was Gabriel Russo, the most formidable figure in New York's underworld. All she knew was that no child should ever sound so broken. If you're curious to see how this tale started and what unfolded from this very moment, subscribe to the channel and let us know in the comments where you're joining from. Every single view allows us to share more stories just like this one. The stubborn grease marks on Grace's uniform were a battle she couldn't win, no matter how vigorously she scrubbed. She had just finished a morning shift at a diner in Brooklyn, made a mad dash home to shower, and was now standing in the restroom of Bellissimo, Manhattan's most prestigious Italian eatery, struggling to appear presentable for her second job. Her reflection told a story she desperately tried to conceal. Deep-seated fatigue was etched in the dark circles under her green eyes. Her blonde hair was pulled back so taut it sparked a headache. At 25, she felt a weariness that belonged to someone much older. "Grace, table 6 is waiting for their wine," Marco, the head server, barked, snapping his fingers in her direction. She hoisted the tray and navigated the opulent dining room. The establishment was steeped in old-world opulence, with its crystal chandeliers, immaculate white tablecloths, and an air thick with the scent of truffles and wealth. She felt like an imposter here, a feeling that shadowed her every single day. The evening had been a whirlwind of activity since 6 o'clock. She moved between tables occupied by politicians, celebrities, and individuals wearing watches that were worth more than her annual rent. Her movements were a display of honed efficiency, her smile unwavering even as her feet throbbed with pain. But at 9:30, the atmosphere shifted dramatically. The restaurant's heavy oak doors swung open, and a wave of silence spread through the dining room like a pebble dropped into a calm pond. Grace looked up from her task of pouring water, her breath catching in her throat. 6 men in dark suits entered first, their gazes sweeping the room with a predator's alertness. Then he made his entrance. Grace had never witnessed someone command a room simply by their presence. He was tall, easily over 6 feet, with immaculately styled dark hair and a jawline sharp enough to cut glass. The charcoal suit seemed molded to his physique, but it was his eyes that made her heart falter. They were the color of amber whiskey, beautiful yet hinting at danger. A small boy was clinging to his neck, his face hidden against the man's shoulder. "Dio mio," she heard Marco mutter beside her. "That's Gabriel Russo." The name meant nothing to Grace, but the fear it instilled was palpable. Every server seemed to melt into the walls. Even the owner, Giovanni, had emerged from the kitchen, nervously wringing his hands. "Who is that?" Grace asked in a hushed tone. Marco shot her a look as if she had sprouted another head. "Just keep your distance from that table. Do not go near them. Do not look at them. Do you get it?" But Grace's attention was already captivated by the child. The boy, who looked no older than 3, was dressed in miniature dress slacks and a button-down shirt. As his father attempted to place him in the corner booth, the child's soft whimpers escalated into piercing wails. "Luca, per favore." The man's voice was deep and authoritative, yet laced with desperation. "Papa needs you to be strong." This only made the boy's cries grow louder. A pang of empathy struck Grace's heart. She recognized that sound. It was the sound of grief, of loss. A cry that originated from a deep, fractured place within. Gabriel Russo tried everything. He offered him food, made promises of gelato, and even produced a toy car from his pocket. But nothing seemed to work. The child's scream suggested his entire world was collapsing. The other patrons began to stir with discomfort. Whispers circulated. Some started to request their bills. Grace watched as this powerful man began to unravel. He clutched his son tightly, murmuring in Italian, his broad shoulders hunched as if to protect the boy from the entire world. She had taken 2 steps in their direction before her mind could process her actions. "Grace," Marco hissed. "Stop." She paid him no mind. The bodyguards reacted instantly, stepping in to block her way. One placed a hand on her shoulder, not with force, but with a firm warning. "Miss, please step back." "I only want to help," Grace said softly, her focus fixed on the distraught child. Gabriel Russo's voice sliced through the tension. "Let her pass." The bodyguards parted like the Red Sea. Grace cautiously approached the table, her heart pounding in her chest. Up close, Gabriel Russo was even more imposing. The sharp contours of his face, the scent of expensive cologne, and the sheer force of his presence radiated from him like a palpable heat. But she directed her attention to the child. "Hello there," she said gently, crouching to meet the boy's gaze. "My name is Grace." Luca's sobbing faltered. He peeked at her from over his father's shoulder, his small face flushed and marked with tear tracks. "That seems like a lot of big emotions for a little person," Grace said, her tone soft and soothing. "It's all right to feel sad. It's all right to let the tears out." "Please," Gabriel implored, and the raw helplessness in his voice struck a chord deep within her. "He's been this way for weeks. Nothing seems to work. The doctors say he's processing grief, that it will take time." Grace's gaze met his, and in that moment, she saw it. A mirrored grief in him, barely contained. His wife. Gabriel's nod was almost imperceptible. A wave of understanding washed over her. The expensive suit couldn't conceal his exhaustion, the utter helplessness of a man who could command everything, but could not soothe his own son's sorrow. "Luca," Grace said softly, "did you know that when my little brother felt sad, we would count the stars together?" The boy's crying had subsided to mere hiccups. Luca was now observing her, his dark eyes filled with curiosity despite his tears. "Your papa seems very strong. I bet he could lift you high enough to touch the ceiling. Would you like to try that?" Luca's tiny hand, which had been clenched on his father's shirt, began to relax. "Grace." Gabriel uttered her name, his voice thick with an emotion that resembled awe. She offered the boy a gentle smile. "But first, you need to take a big breath with me. Can you do that?" She took a deep breath to show him. Luca mirrored her action. Hand out. The child's breathing began to steady. The crying ceased. It felt as if the entire restaurant collectively sighed in relief. "There you go," Grace whispered. "You're so courageous." The words escaped her before she could stop them. "He just needs a mother." Her eyes widened in realization. "I'm so sorry, I didn't mean to." "You're not wrong." Gabriel's voice was barely a whisper. He looked at her as if she had just performed a miracle. "He does." Luca then reached out for her. Grace's breath hitched as the little boy's arms extended in her direction. "Please," Gabriel said, a single word from a man who clearly never had to ask for anything. "Just for a little while." She held out her arms, and Luca practically leaped into them, his small, warm body pressing against her. He wrapped his arms around her neck and let out a long, shuddering sigh, as if he had been holding his breath for an eternity. Grace felt an unexpected sting of tears in her own eyes. She gently rubbed his back in small circles, swaying softly. "It's all right, sweet boy." When she glanced up, Gabriel was watching her with an expression she couldn't quite decipher. It was a mixture of hunger, perhaps, or hope. It was something that sent a flush to her cheeks and made her heart race. "What's your full name?" he asked. "Grace Mitchell." "Grace Mitchell," he echoed as if he were memorizing it. "How did you do that?" "I just saw what he needed." "And what is it that he needs?" She met his intense gaze. "To know that someone sees his pain, that it's okay not to be okay." A subtle change occurred in Gabriel's expression, like a fissure in his carefully constructed armor. "I need you," he stated plainly. Grace's pulse quickened. "What?" "To help with Luca. Tell me your price." I'm not available for purchase. A corner of his mouth twitched into a slight smile. Everyone has a price, Grace Mitchell. I'm already working 2 jobs. I will pay you more than both of them combined. I'll triple it. He leaned in closer. You have a special way with him. I've seen 17 nannies try and fail. You managed to calm him in less than a minute. I'm not a nanny, I'm a waitress. You're whatever you must be to get by, he observed, and the truth in his words left her breathless. I understand that. So, I need you to understand this. My son requires your help, and I always protect what is essential to him. It should have felt like a warning. Instead, it felt like a vow. Luca had drifted off to sleep on her shoulder. Grace looked down at him and felt a sense of clarity, as if a missing piece had just fallen into place. I'll consider it, she whispered. Gabriel retrieved a card from his jacket, a piece of heavy black cardstock with silver lettering. It displayed only a phone number. You have until morning, he said. Their fingers made contact as she accepted the card, and a jolt of electricity shot up her arm. Don't keep me waiting, Bella. The Italian term of endearment flowed from his lips like smooth silk. I'm not known for my patience. He stood up and gently took his sleeping son from her. For a brief moment, they created an unusual picture. The underworld figure, the waitress, and the sleeping child nestled between them. Then, Gabriel Russo departed from the restaurant, his guards assembling around him in a protective formation. Grace remained frozen, the black card feeling like a hot coal in her pocket. She didn't realize that in a matter of hours, her entire life would be different. She only knew that when Gabriel Russo looked at her, she felt truly seen for the first time in a very long time. And heaven help her, she longed to feel that way again. Sleep was a stranger to Grace that night. She sat in her cramped studio apartment, 4th floor, no elevator, a ceiling that leaked, and stared at the black card on her coffee table as if it were a ticking bomb. Her roommate, Christina, had searched for Gabriel Russo online and had spent the next hour presenting Grace with her findings. There were news articles hinting at illicit dealings, photographs of him at high-profile charity events, always unaccompanied since his wife's passing, and whispered stories about the Russo family's dominion over New York's hidden economy. You'd be out of your mind to call him, Christina had declared. Grace, he's literally a crime lord. He's a father who's looking for help. He's a man who takes lives. Grace recalled the deep exhaustion in Gabriel's eyes, the fierce love evident in the way he held his son. Maybe he's both. At 5 in the morning, she dialed the number. He picked up on the very first ring. I had a feeling you'd call. Gabriel's voice was husky with sleep. Can't sleep either? I have some terms, Grace. I'm all ears. I'll assist with Luca 3 days a week. The other days, I'll continue my job at the restaurant, and if I ever feel that this arrangement isn't right, I'm free to leave. No questions asked, no repercussions. A long silence hung in the air between them. When he finally responded, his tone had shifted, becoming more rigid. You believe I would harm you for wanting to leave? I don't know what you're capable of. That's the issue. Another moment of silence. Then, to her surprise, fair enough. I accept your terms, but with one condition of my own, which is, you don't just leave without explaining why. If there's an issue, you communicate it to me. I can't resolve a problem I'm not aware of. The vulnerability in his words took her by surprise. All right. My driver will be there to pick you up at 9. Dress in something comfortable. Luca enjoys playing outdoors. Wait, you mean today? You've had the entire night to get ready, Grace. And as I mentioned, I'm not a patient man. The call ended. At precisely 9 o'clock, a black SUV stopped in front of her apartment building. The driver opened the door for her without uttering a word. The Russo property was hidden behind imposing iron gates and high walls. As the vehicle passed through them, Grace's jaw dropped. The mansion was immense, covering what seemed to be an entire city block. It featured stone exteriors, flawlessly kept gardens, and a fountain in the driveway that was likely worth more than her entire life's earnings. The front door swung open before she even had a chance to knock. An older woman with piercing eyes was waiting. Miss Mitchell, I'm Rosa, the household manager. Mr. Russo is waiting for you." The interior was even more impressive, with marble floors, crystal chandeliers, and artwork that looked like it belonged in a museum. Grace followed Rosa through a series of rooms, each one large enough to contain her entire apartment. They found Gabriel in a vast living room, seated on the floor in his suit trousers and a white dress shirt. Luca was in the midst of a full-blown tantrum, hurling toy cars across the room while screaming at the top of his lungs. Gabriel glanced up as Grace came in, and the expression of relief that washed over his face was almost painful to see. "Thank God," he said, his voice barely a whisper. "He's been like this since he woke up." Grace put down her bag and calmly walked into the middle of the turmoil. She sat on the floor a short distance from Luca, not getting too close, but simply making her presence known. "That looks like a whole lot of anger," she said in a conversational tone. "Like really big, massive, enormous anger." Luca sent another car flying. "I feel that way sometimes too," Grace went on. "Just yesterday I was so angry with my broken refrigerator that I wanted to toss it out the window, but it was too heavy, so I ended up having ice cream for dinner instead." Luca's screams subsided into frustrated grunts. "Your papa seems quite worried. Do you see his expression?" "That's his worried look." The boy stole a quick glance at his father before looking away. "I have a feeling that if you tried using your words instead of throwing things, he would understand what's bothering you. Want to give it a try?" Luca's small face puckered. "Mama," he whispered. "Want Mama?" The words shattered Grace's heart. She looked over at Gabriel, who had frozen completely. "I know, my dear," Grace said gently. "I bet you miss her so much it feels like a physical pain." Luca nodded, fresh tears streaming down his face. "It's perfectly fine to miss her. It's fine to feel sad and angry. Your mama loved you very, very much, didn't she?" He nodded again. "She would want you to find happiness again someday. It might not be today and maybe not tomorrow, but it will happen. And until that day comes, your papa is right here. He's quite big and strong. Do you think he gives good hugs?" Luca looked at his father with uncertainty. Gabriel's voice was hoarse. "The very best hugs, Piccolo. I promise." The boy rushed toward his father. Gabriel embraced him, holding him tightly, his eyes shut as Luca wept into his chest. Grace began to get up to give them a moment alone, but Gabriel's hand shot out and grasped her wrist. "Stay," he said, his voice strained. "Please." So she remained, watching as a powerful underworld figure shed silent tears into his son's hair. After Luca had fallen asleep, Gabriel took him upstairs. Grace waited while Rosa served her a cup of tea. "He hasn't shed a tear since she passed," Rosa shared in a low voice. "Mr. Russo, he has been like a stone. But you've allowed him to feel again." When Gabriel came back, he had changed into dark jeans and a black t-shirt, which revealed the corner of a tattoo on his neck. He appeared younger this way, less intimidating. "I could use a drink," he announced. "Care to join me?" Grace followed him into his study. The room was decorated with leather furniture, dark wood, and floor-to-ceiling windows that offered a view of the city. He poured 2 glasses of an amber-colored liquid. "I don't typically drink this early," Grace mentioned. "And I don't typically break down in front of people I've just met," he countered. He took a long drink. "You're a dangerous woman, Grace Mitchell." "I'm the furthest thing from dangerous. That's exactly what makes you so perilous." He stepped closer. "You bypass all defenses without even trying. You make people confront emotions they've long kept hidden. Perhaps that isn't such a bad thing. In my line of work, emotions can get you eliminated." "Then perhaps your line of work is flawed." Gabriel let out a short, sharp, and surprised laugh. "You have no clue what my world is like." "You're right, I don't. But I do know that Luca needs more than a father who has hardened himself into stone." They stood there, staring at each other, the space between them alive with an unspoken energy. Gabriel's phone vibrated. He glanced at the screen, and his entire posture shifted. His shoulders squared and his jaw tightened. "I have a matter to attend to," he said. "Rosa will show you to Luca's room and explain his daily routine. I'll be back in time for dinner." Is everything all right? His smile was sharp. Just some business, Bella. Nothing you need to be concerned about. But as he walked by her, he paused, his hand hesitating near her cheek without making contact. Thank you for what you did today. It's my job now. No. His amber eyes locked onto hers. This stopped being just a job the moment you held my son. He departed with 6 armed men following him, leaving Grace by herself, contemplating what kind of business would necessitate such a heavy presence. She was beginning to understand that Gabriel Russo had 2 sides, the loving father and the unforgiving boss. And heaven help her, she was intrigued by both. 3 weeks went by in what felt like a haze. Grace settled into a new pattern. 3 days with Luca, 3 days at the restaurant, and 1 day dedicated to catching up on much-needed sleep. The amount of money Gabriel was paying her was staggering. She had already cleared her credit card debt and had a substantial amount left over to get her car repaired. But the money wasn't the reason she continued to stay. Luca was undergoing a remarkable change. He was smiling now, and even laughing. He had started to call her Gracie, in his endearing little voice. They had established their own set of routines, having breakfast together, spending time playing in the garden, and reading stories before his afternoon nap. And then there was Gabriel. He was becoming the real issue. He was coming home from work earlier, joining them for dinner, and sitting with them during story time, his large figure crammed into a child-sized chair. Grace often noticed him observing her, when she would dance with Luca to light-hearted songs, when she would gently wipe juice from his chin, or simply when she was present in his home. The unspoken attraction between them had escalated from a mere flicker to a raging inferno. "You're staring again," Grace pointed out one evening after Luca had been put to bed. They were in the garden, with the city's lights twinkling in the distance. "I can't seem to help it." Gabriel's voice was gravelly. He had consumed a few drinks and his usual guard was down. "You've brought a brightness back to this house, to him and to me. Gabriel, do you have any idea how long it's been since I've felt anything other than anger and sorrow?" He moved in closer. 8 months. Then you came into that restaurant and looked at me as if I were still a person. You are a person. I'm a monster, Grace. I've done things that would make you flee in terror. Then why haven't you shared them with me? He gave a dark laugh. Because I'm a selfish man. Because I want you to continue looking at me the way you do now, as if I'm someone who can be redeemed. Everyone deserves a chance at redemption. Be careful, Bella. That kind of positive outlook could get you into trouble, especially when you're with me. His hand rose, and this time it made contact, his fingers gently tracing the line of her cheekbone. Grace should have stepped back. She should have reminded herself that this man was a source of danger, that she was his employee, and that the situation was becoming increasingly complicated. Instead, she found herself leaning into his touch. "I'm not scared of you. You ought to be. Why? Because you oversee a criminal organization? Because people are intimidated by you?" She looked him directly in the eyes. "I've seen you slice Luca's sandwich into the shape of dinosaurs. I've seen you become flustered over a minor scrape on his knee. I've heard you attempt to sing Italian lullabies, slightly off-key. That's the man I'm afraid of. The one who's making me feel things I shouldn't be feeling." Gabriel's thumb gently caressed her lower lip, and she let out a soft gasp. "Grace," he cautioned, "I'm not going anywhere." He kissed her. It wasn't a soft, tentative kiss. It was a release of months of pent-up sorrow, loneliness, and intense longing, all conveyed through the meeting of their lips, hands, and breath. Grace yielded to him, her fingers weaving into his hair as he drew her nearer. When they finally separated, both were breathing heavily. Gabriel rested his forehead against hers. "This is a precarious situation," he whispered. "I'm aware. You're entitled to someone better than me. I'll be the one to determine what I'm entitled to." He pulled back slightly to look at her, his amber eyes intense. "You are now under my safeguarding. Do you grasp the full meaning of that? That you'll ensure my safety? That I will set the world ablaze if anyone dares to harm you?" The statement should have frightened her. Instead, a sense of warmth spread through her chest. The sound of shattering glass echoed from somewhere inside the house, followed by shouting. Gabriel's body instantly tensed. He pushed Grace behind him, and a weapon materialized in his hand as if from nowhere. "Stay behind me," he ordered. In that moment, he was the underworld boss, cold, lethal, and decisive. They moved swiftly through the house, the sounds of more shouting and Rosa's screams filling the air. They burst into the foyer to find 5 men wearing black masks. One of them was holding Rosa with a knife at her throat. Another had Luca, who was screaming and reaching for his father. A chill ran down Grace's spine. "Russo," one of the masked men said, "we've been anticipating this. Let them go." Gabriel's voice was icy and menacing. "This matter is between us. No, this is about delivering a message. You eliminated our boss's brother. Now we're taking what you hold dear." The man holding Luca started to move toward the door. Everything seemed to unfold in slow motion. Gabriel raised his weapon. The other masked men did the same. Rosa was sobbing. Luca was screaming, and Grace, in a moment of incredible bravery, or perhaps foolishness, did the unthinkable. She ran towards Luca. "No!" Gabriel's roar filled the room. The sound of gunshots erupted in the foyer. Grace felt a searing heat tear through her arm, but she didn't falter. She reached Luca, snatching him from the masked man's grasp, and dropped to the floor, shielding the boy with her own body. More gunshots rang out, followed by shouting and the sound of heavy footsteps as Gabriel's security team swarmed the house. Then, an eerie silence fell. Strong hands helped Grace to her feet. She held Luca close, feeling the rapid beat of his heart against her own. "You're safe, little one. You're safe. I have you." Grace's voice trembled. Gabriel was standing before her, his face and shirt splattered with blood. "Grace, you're hurt." She looked down to see that her sleeve was soaked with blood, but Luca was completely unharmed. That was all that mattered to her. "I'm fine," she said. "He's safe because of what you did." Gabriel's hands were shaking as he reached out for both of them, pulling them into a tight embrace against his chest. "Madonna Santa Grace, you could have been killed. So could he. But you..." He couldn't complete the sentence. His arms tightened around them. "You remarkable, reckless, courageous woman." Paramedics arrived and the police came and went without asking any questions. Grace took note of this. As a doctor bandaged her arm, it was just a graze, nothing severe. She watched Gabriel hold Luca, whispering to him in Italian, his hands carefully checking every part of his son. When he finally placed the boy with Rosa, he turned to Grace with an expression that took her breath away. "You saved my son's life. Anyone would have done the same." "No." He crossed the room to her in 3 quick strides. "No one else would have. You placed yourself between him and danger." He kissed her again, but this time it was different. Softer, more profound, as if she were the air he needed to breathe after being submerged for too long. "I love you," he whispered against her lips. "I realize it sounds crazy. I know this is all happening too fast, but seeing you nearly lose your life made me understand. I'm terrified of this feeling, but I love you." Grace's heart seemed to stop, then restart, and then it soared. "That's incredibly frightening," she breathed. "I know. And it's completely irrational. I know that too. And I love you too." A brilliant smile lit up his face. "That's even more frightening. I'm aware." They both laughed, and it felt like a release, like a moment of pure joy, like the feeling of coming home. Luca came over to them and grabbed onto both of their hands. "Gracie, stay." Grace looked at Gabriel. He looked back at her. "Always," they said in unison. The following morning, Grace awoke in a guest room. Her arm was neatly bandaged, and she was dressed in borrowed silk pajamas, surrounded by opulence. She found Gabriel in his study, engaged in a rapid-fire Italian conversation on the phone. When he noticed her, his expression softened, and he promptly ended the call. "You should be in bed," he said. "I'm all right, Gabriel. We need to discuss what happened last night." He poured 2 cups of coffee and handed one to her. "I've increased security 3-fold. No one will be able to get close to us again." "That's not what I'm referring to. Those men, They came here because of you, because of your activities. Yes. The straightforward admission hung in the air between them. Grace sat down, choosing her words with care. I need you to tell me everything, the complete truth. Gabriel remained silent for a considerable time. When he finally began to speak, his voice was devoid of any pretense. My family has been at the helm of organized crime in New York for 3 generations. I took over the enterprise at the age of 23 after my father was taken out. I've taken lives, Grace. I've ordered others to be eliminated, and I've broken laws that would send me to prison for the rest of my life. He met her gaze. I am precisely the person you're afraid of, a man of illicit dealings, an underworld figure, the monster that everyone believes me to be. Grace absorbed this information. Luca's mother, how did she pass away? A flicker of pain crossed his face. A car bomb that was intended for me. She was 8 months pregnant with our second child. Both of them. He trailed off. I wiped out that rival family. Every last one of them. Jesus, Gabriel. This is the world I live in. His voice grew heavy. If you choose to stay, you become entangled in it. Luca has already grown to love you. He turned away from her. I cannot bear to see another woman I love lose her life because of my choices. Grace stood up and walked over to him, gently turning him to face her. Don't I have a say in this? You don't grasp the level of risk involved. Then make me understand. Show me your world. Allow me to determine for myself if I am capable of handling it. Grace. I shielded your son from harm. Do you think that was a spontaneous act? I did it because I'm already a part of this, Gabriel. I've fallen for both of you, and I have no regrets. So stop trying to shield me by creating distance between us. His hands cupped her face and he pressed his forehead against hers. You are the most courageous person I have ever encountered. Or the most foolish. That as well. He conceded with a faint smile, which quickly vanished. If you decide to stay, there are conditions. You will not go anywhere without a security detail. You will learn how to handle a weapon. You will report everything to me, any potential threats, anything that seems out of the ordinary. All right. I'm serious, Grace. In my world, information is what keeps you safe. I understand. And then he hesitated. You should be aware that other families will view you as a vulnerability. They will see Luca as a means of leverage. What you did last night, it's going to make you known. Grace Mitchell, the waitress who stood up for Gabriel Russo's son. I didn't get shot, it was a minor injury. Don't downplay your actions. His grip on her tightened. You're a hero, my hero, Luca's hero, and because of that, you are now also a target. The gravity of his words settled upon her. I'm still not going anywhere. You're a stubborn woman, and you find it endearing. I do. Heaven help me, I truly do. In the week that followed, Grace's life underwent a complete transformation. At Gabriel's insistence, she resigned from her job at the restaurant. She relocated to the mansion, where he assured her she would be safer. She began training sessions with his security personnel. She also started to learn about Gabriel's legitimate business ventures, which included real estate, restaurants, and construction. It turned out that not all of his activities were outside the law. The man was a fascinating mix of contradictions, a ruthless leader and a loving father, a feared enforcer, and a generous supporter of charities. You contribute millions to children's hospitals, Grace remarked one evening. It's guilt money, he responded from his seat where he was reading a story to Luca. Or perhaps you're not as malevolent as you believe yourself to be. Don't try to romanticize me, Bella. I'm still a monster. A monster who gets emotional during Disney films. I got emotional once. It was 3 times. I kept track. Luca let out a giggle, and Gabriel playfully scowled at Grace, a look that was completely negated by his smile. These moments, a blend of ordinary home life and underlying danger, became her new reality. She was also introduced to the other influential families at a dinner hosted by Gabriel. Grace found herself in the company of the wives of other underworld figures who greeted her with surprising warmth. "We heard about what you did," one of the women said. "How you protected the boy. Gabriel has made a good choice." "We're not," Grace began to protest. "Oh, my dear," the woman chuckled. "The way that man looks at you, it's as if you placed the moon in the sky. Believe me, you are already his." Later that night, after all the guests had departed, Gabriel found Grace on the balcony, looking overwhelmed. "Your world is nothing like I expected. Are you disappointed?" "I'm fascinated," she said, turning to look at him. "They all hold you in high regard, and yes, they are afraid of you, but they also place their trust in you." He smiled. "You have a way of seeing the good in everyone." "I see what's real." She moved closer to him. "You're a decent man caught in a web of difficult circumstances. You make it sound almost heroic. It's not. Perhaps not, but it is human, and for me that is more than enough." Gabriel took a small box from his pocket. Grace's breath caught in her throat. "I know this is moving quickly," he said. "I know this world is chaotic, and I'm asking you to step into danger every single day. But Grace," he opened the box to reveal a breathtaking diamond ring, flanked by emeralds. "I don't want to lose another moment. Life is too brief, too delicate. Marry me. Be a mother to Luca. Be my wife. Let me dedicate the rest of my existence to trying to be worthy of you." Tears welled up in Grace's eyes. "Yes." You didn't even hesitate. "I've been contemplating this since the moment you first kissed me. Yes, Gabriel. Yes to everything." His hands trembled as he placed the ring on her finger. Then he drew her into a kiss that was full of promise and the hope of a shared future. "I will keep you safe," he whispered. "I promise." "I know, but I will also keep you safe. That's what people who are in this together do." "Partners," he echoed, as if the word were new to him. "I like the sound of that." They stood there, holding each other, with the city's lights shimmering below, their future looking bright despite the ever-present shadows. Inside, Luca was sleeping soundly, finally beginning to heal, finally content. And Grace came to the realization that love doesn't always come into your life quietly. Sometimes it makes a dramatic entrance in the form of a crying child and a desperate father, and sometimes the most perilous decision you can make is the very one that leads you to salvation. 3 years later, Grace stood in the garden, watching Luca, now a 6-year-old, play with his baby sister, Isabella. The little girl toddled along behind her brother, her laughter echoing as he made amusing faces. "Mama, look at this!" Luca shouted as he performed a cartwheel. "That's wonderful, my love," Grace laughed back. She was Mama now, a title she had held since their wedding 2 years prior, a pair of strong arms wrapped around her waist from behind. Gabriel rested his chin on her shoulder, his hands coming to rest protectively on her stomach, where their third child was growing. "Content?" he asked in a low voice. "Incredibly so." "Even with the security and the constant threat of danger?" "Especially because of all that," she said, turning in his embrace. "You've honored your word. You've kept us out of harm's way. You've given us a family. You are the one who built this, Bella. I merely provided the framework. You are the one who filled it with love." They had constructed a life together, a life that was intricate and at times chaotic, but it was theirs. Gabriel had even taken a step back from the more perilous parts of his enterprise, shifting his focus to legitimate businesses for the sake of his children, and for her. He would never be completely free of his past. That wasn't the nature of their world. But he was making an effort, and that was what mattered most. "I love you," Grace said, "my dangerous, amazing man." "I love you more," he answered, kissing her gently. "My brave, headstrong, flawless wife." Luca ran up to them and playfully collided with their legs. Isabella followed close behind, and Gabriel scooped them both up, their squeals of laughter filling the air. Grace looked at her family, her unconventional yet perfect family, and her thoughts drifted back to that night in the restaurant, to a little boy whose tears wouldn't stop. She had walked straight into a dangerous situation without a second thought. She had said yes to love without any reservations, and in return, She had been given everything she could ever want. Sometimes the most beautiful stories are born from the most courageous decisions. Sometimes you must venture into the unknown to discover where you truly belong. And sometimes a child's cry can guide you to the exact place you were always meant to be. This story has now concluded. If it resonated with you in any way, please show your support by liking it and sharing it with others who appreciate heartfelt tales. New stories will be available soon. Until we meet again.